Things were going great. I was producing an album for my parents who are musicians. They were on Trinity Broadcasting Network and traveled around and sang at different churches. A lot of focus on building and ambition and dreams. And in January of 2013, my mom was diagnosed with a brain cancer and life stopped completely. Less than 12 hours from the time they found the tumor, she was in surgery and they were trying to pull this thing out. She was the driving force of our family. And when that person goes under, either step up or you lay down and die. We were her 24/7 caregivers. Knowing that you have such a limited amount of time, but still having to take time for yourself so that you can survive it is so complicated. It definitely was the most gut-wrenching time in life. But my mom did something in this season of her life that completely threw me for a loop. Hey everybody, and welcome to the Making Room podcast. I'm your host, Paul Radke, and this is where we clear out the clutter and make more room for God to move in our lives. Today is going to be a special episode. I'm going to be talking about my relationship with my mom. And for those of you that don't know, in 2013, my mom was diagnosed with brain cancer. And for the next 2 years, my family would pretty much take care of her full time until she passed away in 2015. And it was definitely one of the most impactful times of my life. There is, forever going to be scars of trauma during that time, but there's also beautiful memories and things that I would not trade for anything that happened during those years as well. And I want to share it with you because I know that there are some of you out there that are caregivers yourselves. And caregiving can be so difficult and so confusing at times and so frustrating at times. And it's helpful to hear the stories of people that have been through it and to realize that, you know what, it's normal what you're going through. All the complex emotions and complex feelings are normal. And so that's part of why I want to share it. But also another reason I want to share it is because there's also a theme that's important for life in the midst of this story. And that is a theme that Jesus taught us 2,000 years ago that we still have not gotten a hold of. And Jesus said that if anybody would seek to save their life, they would lose it. But if anybody would lose their life for his sake, they would find it. And this whole concept of having to die to self in order to live is something that Jesus introduced and that we as his body, as followers of Jesus, are still trying to commit to and still trying to figure out, because it's a whole lot more easy to say it than it is to do it, right? It's a whole lot more easy to talk about laying down your life for your family than it is to actually lay down your life for your family and walk that out. And, it sounds simple, just die to self, but it's really complex because humans are complex. Things that I desire are complex. Things that I want to get rid of are complex. You could ask my wife about this. There's not too much about me that's simple. I'm fairly complex sometimes. And that's true of most of us. I mean, you'd like to think of life as black and white and yes and no, but a lot of times it's not that binary and there's a lot of in-between space. And caregiving is definitely something where you experience a lot of that gray area because it is not easy. It is not something simple. It is not something that is just easy to walk out and figure out later on. It's actually quite complex and requires a strong dedication, not only to your loved one that you're caring for, but in my opinion, it requires a strong dedication of faith and that God is with you and God's not forsaken you. At least that's my experience as a person of faith walking through it. And I don't know how people go through difficult things like that without God. I do not get how people can walk through such hopeless situations and do it without the love of Jesus and the hope that Jesus provides. I don't know if I would have made it without that. And so anyway, just to kind of give you a little bit of what was going on in my life at the time, in 2012, things were going great. I was producing an album for my parents who are musicians. They were on Trinity Broadcasting Network and traveled around and sang at different churches. So we were producing a brand new album, built a studio, which I'm actually sitting in right now, to produce that album. And so it was a year of really focusing on being productive, ambition, accomplishing a lot of things. There were a lot of things going on at the church at the time. My father's a pastor. And so it was really just a lot of focus on building and ambition and dreams and focus. And in 2013, January of 2013, my mom was diagnosed with a brain cancer named glioblastoma multiforme. She had a tumor the size of a man's fist with these fingers kind of going down into her brain. And all of a sudden, all of that ambition and all of that dreaming and all of that building came to a halt, and life stopped completely as everything became the focus of, obviously, getting her through this crazy disease. And it was probably less than 12 hours from the time they found the tumor in an ER CAT scan that she was in surgery and they were trying to pull this thing out. Super aggressive. Prognosis is not good for that disease. It's like 2 to 3 years, I believe, tops. And so, obviously you're thrown into panic mode. And we were thrown into crisis management really quickly because you would like to think that when a crisis hits your family like that the world stops and that everybody's focus is on you and your family and what y'all are going through. But the truth is the world keeps going. And you've got to find a way to manage your job. You've got to find a way to manage other people's schedules and everything that's happening. You've got to find a way to manage finances and health insurance and all of this. There's lots that goes into life, even once you've been diagnosed with a terrible illness. And so our family really jumps into that. And thankfully, we have such amazing church people and friends that came around us, and you know what? They acted like their world had stopped too. They were with us, they supported us, they cooked for us, they were there for us as much as they could be, and we're just so eternally grateful for those people that were there for us during that time, and I don't know how we would have gotten through it without them. But so Mom gets through the surgery goes well, and so now she's got to go into a rehab center for physical therapy and speech therapy. And I mean, when they operate and open up your skull to operate on your brain and start digging in there, a lot of things are affected. So her speech was affected, her walking was affected. I mean, there wasn't much that wasn't touched by this surgery and by the impact of this tumor. So we start walking that out with her, and obviously we're with her as much as we possibly can be and supporting her as much as we can as a family. She goes through chemotherapy, she goes through radiation, she's fighting to get mobility back in one half of her entire body that was affected. She's fighting to get her speech back and her voice back so she can sing. She's fighting to get back her being able to play guitar and to drive and all of the things. Everything is affected. And we walk with her through that, and she does it. I mean, let me tell you just the impact of this woman on everybody's life. She does it with such faith and with such trust in who God is and with such joy. I mean, 6 hours out of being out of ICU, and she is just lighting up the hospital room, telling jokes and sharing stories and just being a light to everybody that was worried and had every reason to fear. Obviously, she had every reason to fear, but instead she just exuded faith and trust in God. She exuded the fruits of the Spirit when she had every opportunity and reason to not. And it was just such a demonstration of God's goodness. It was such a demonstration of what a person of faith looks like going through difficulty, and was so amazing for everybody that got to witness it. I don't think there was anybody that got to experience her right after that surgery and through the months that followed as she went through rehabs and chemo and all of the craziness that she would have to go through. I mean, she just lit up the family. She was so full of joy. She was so full of life. And it was such a beautiful depiction of what it means to be full of faith, what it means to be a follower of Jesus, even when you get disappointing news. And through 2013, we continued just to get her back on her feet. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, by the end of 2013, she had rehabbed so well, come back from all her therapies, and was still doing more physical therapies and speech therapies and stuff, but she had started to drive a little bit. She had, picked around on the guitar. That was an uphill battle. Just, it was so affected. Started to sing again. We did a Christmas concert that year that she was a part of. So special. I mean, I wouldn't trade these memories and these moments for anything, even though it was scary and it was terrible, the things that we were walking out. Just the goodness of God shown through that season was impeccable and, just inescapable. Get through the end of 2013. She does an MRI in January of 2014 to check on and just see what's going on with the brain, what's going on with the tumor. Has it shrunk? Has it gone away? Is it coming back? Have faith for a good report, but we don't get a good report. And she gets the disappointing news that the tumor has come back and it's growing very rapidly. It's not just slowly coming back, but it's coming back with a vengeance. Goes through another brain surgery in February of that year. And unfortunately, this one doesn't go as good as the year before. They're not able to get as much of it. They're not able to do as much to get rid of it. And she goes from, being rehabbed and getting to such a better place where she's able to function in life and do for herself and live somewhat normally, to now she's thrown back in and her brain is once again gone through trauma to have this tumor removed. She's got to start going through physical therapy all over again, speech therapy all over again. Just thrown into that whole rehabilitation process once more. And to say that I was demoralized is an understatement. I can't imagine how she must have felt. But honestly, she once again did it with such joy and peace and trust and faith in who God was, that she just lit up everywhere that she went. She lit up the room for every nurse and every doctor. She lit up the room for every family member and every friend. She was just the life of the party, even with everything that she was going through. And as we walked out the rest of 2014, things wouldn't go as well as they did the year before. The tumor would still continue to grow and continue to be aggressive. We tried a couple of different things, different laser treatments, and trying to attack it because it was in an area of the brain that couldn't be reached. And there was nothing else the doctors could do. And for probably the second half of 2014, she lost motor function on one side of her body, wasn't able to walk, wasn't able to bathe herself or get to the bathroom by herself or get in bed by herself. She needed 24/7 care for everything. And my brother, myself, my father, thankfully some great friends and family stepped up to help as well. But we were her 24/7 caregivers, and everything in life stopped. Everything in life became about taking care of somebody that had taken care of us for many years. She was the backbone of our family. She was the driving force of our family. And when that person goes under, you've got two choices. You either step up or you lay down and die. And we stepped up and we did everything that we could to help her and to take care of her. We tried diets. We tried everything we could to get her in a healthier place, but it just wasn't what God had in store for whatever reason. And it was probably the most gut-wrenching, no, it definitely was the most gut-wrenching time in life, to sit there with somebody that you love so much day in and day out and watch them slowly fade away. There's no pain quite like that. Taking care of somebody and there's hope of recovery is challenging all by itself and difficult. But when you get to a place where you're taking care of somebody that doesn't have hope of recovery and you don't know how long they have. And all you can do is be there for them and take care of them and enjoy and squeeze every bit of life you can out of those moments. And the pain of that is so great and so challenging because, yes, you love the person. And yes, we loved our mom and we wanted to be there for her. And my dad loved his wife and wanted to be there for her. But you still have needs and you still have desires. And you still sometimes need to get out the house and quit being inundated and have that burden on you 24/7 But when we would do those things, we just felt guilty over it. And just all the stuff that comes up of knowing that you have such a limited amount of time, but still having to take time for yourself so that you can survive it and push through it is so complicated. It's such, you definitely come out of that time in life being grateful for life, being grateful for the goodness of God in it. You also come out of it needing therapy because it's traumatic. You come out of it needing to talk to somebody and trying to sort out the complex emotions that you have in that time, and learning how to take care of them and learning how to take care of yourself and learning how to love others at the same time of loving yourself and trying to manage the idea that I've got to take care of me or I can't take care of them, but they need me to take care of them, so who's going to take care of me? Managing that is not easy. And we definitely we're so challenged in that. But God sustained us through it. And those months spent with her where she was just there and, we were able to talk and thankfully she never completely forgot who we were or was not able to speak, although it was inhibited more and more as time went on. Those moments were just so special. Those moments were just, as I was preparing for this episode, I went back and looked over some pictures of that time. And obviously I just started bawling, crying, because just looking at that time again, looking into her eyes, looking into my eyes and remembering what it felt like and all of its trauma and all of its terribleness, but in all of its beauty and in all of its life. And it was definitely a challenge going back and experiencing those emotions again, and still is. When I think about it right now, talking about it right now isn't easy, but I believe it's important, and this is why I think it's so important to talk about. And yes, if you're a caregiver, you probably are relating to a lot of what I'm saying, but my mom did something in this season of her life that completely threw me for a loop. And that you think somebody teaches you how to live a life of faith and a life of love when they're able to do for you and they're able to, take care of you and they're able to accomplish things and have ambition. It looks like such a life of faith when you're going out and you're being successful. But Mom taught me more about how to live a life of faith by the way she died than she ever could have when she was healthy. She taught me more about what it meant to trust God, not just because you're being successful and everything's going great, not because you're building something and it can be scary to build, but because everything's being torn apart and He's the only hope that you have. And you can choose to walk that out in the joy and the peace that He's provided, or you can choose to walk it out in anxiety and in worry and in depression. And my mom, thankfully, chose to walk it out in faith and in trust of who Jesus was and what Jesus had promised. And just experiencing the love that she had for Him and had for us to fight to be here when there was the only reason to fight was because she loved us. The only reason to be here is because she wanted to be here with us. And just to see that love poured out and that she laid down her life and God just filled her with life and with love. And when she wasn't able to complete, be successful by the world's definition or have ambition or have goals that she wanted to accomplish by living a life of such faith and such trust in who God was when there was no hope and the doctors had said this was it and there was nothing else they could do. And she still chose to walk it out in joy and in peace and had every reason to be anxious and full of worry, had every reason to be stressed out and depressed and upset at God for the hand that life had dealt her. But instead, she was the life of the party. She was full of joy. She was full of peace. She was full of trust. She was full of faith that God was able to do what He promised. And that if she was able to stay here on earth, she was going to do it in joy. And if God decided to take her, she was going to do it in trust, knowing that He would have us in the palm of His hand. And a lot of times we try to show the love of Jesus by the way we live. And we try to show faith in Jesus by the great ambitions and the great successes that we have. But the greatest way we can show the love of Jesus is by the way that we die. The greatest way we can show a life of faith is not by the way that we go and accomplish all these great things, but it's in the way that we do what Jesus said when he said that no man takes my life, but I give it. Nobody took the life of Jesus. Nobody stole it from him. He laid it down. He sacrificed so that we might have life. And that's the same sort of sacrifice that I saw in Mom in a way, and that she didn't let life take life from her, but she actually laid down her life so that she could give life to others. It's not what she wanted. It's not how she wanted it to go. It's not what she was having faith for, but it's the hand that life had dealt her. It's what God had asked her to walk through. And rather than act like life was being stolen from her and angry about it, she chose to let go, to trust in God's ultimate plan. She chose to lay down her life so that God could infill her with life and in turn fill us with life. Even in her difficulty, even in her pain, even in her suffering, she was able to show us how much Jesus loves us and what faith really looks like, what trust in God really looks like. Not because she was accomplishing so much, but because she was walking through the valley of the shadow of death and she chose to fear no evil because she knew that the shepherd was with her. And I wonder what could be accomplished if we chose to live our lives the same way. I know I've walked out life many times feeling like life is being stolen from me, feeling like they are taking from me and they're stealing from me, and all of the fear and anxiety and anger that can come with that. But what happens when I choose to lay my life down and they can't take it from me? They can't steal it from me. I lay down my life so that no man can take it. What happens when I choose to lay down my life for my spouse or for my children? What happens when I choose to lay down my life for the world around me so that nobody can take it, and I've got no reason to be bitter, and I've got no reason to be angry, and I've got no reason to have every work of wickedness operating in me? But I choose to lay down my life in trust and in reliance that God is able to raise me back up. What happens when I have faith like Jesus had to not let his life be taken, but to choose to lay it down? What happens when I have faith the way my mom had faith to not let life steal from her, but that when she was diagnosed with a terminal illness, she chose in turn to lay down her life and to give her life to everybody that was around her? She chose to fill them with joy and with peace and show them a representation of what it meant to trust even in the darkest of moments. She taught me how to live life by the way that she died. Jesus taught us how to live by the way that he died. Jesus taught us how to walk out our faith and say, Lord, not my will be done, but your will be done. Lord, don't do what I want you to do. Do what you want to do, because I know your plans for me are greater than any plan I can have for myself. And when will we, as followers of Jesus, make a stronger commitment to walk out our days with that in mind? To walk out our days saying that nobody's taken my life, nobody's taken my freedom, nobody's taking these things from me, but I lay them down freely so that I might be an accurate representation of who Jesus is in my life. So that I might accurately display the love that Jesus showed to me when the Pharisees didn't take it, the Romans didn't take it, Pilate didn't take it. Nobody took the life of Jesus, but Jesus laid it down so that he might give us life. My mom did not let that glioblastoma multiforme steal her life, but she showed more life in those 2 years than she ever had in the rest of her life. She showed more to us about how to walk out faith in those 2 years than she had ever before that. She showed us more about how to trust God when she was going through the worst of times than she ever could have when everything was going well. And I want to encourage you to stop looking at life as being stolen from you. Quit looking at life as if it is being taken and there's nothing that you can do to stop it, but instead change your perspective and make the decision to lay down your life. If you want to see restoration in your marriage, it's pretty simple. Lay down your life. Choose to die to self. If you want to see revival in your relationship with God, the answer is pretty simple. Lay down your life and choose to die. If you want to see your community brought back to life and brought to the saving knowledge of Jesus, the answer is pretty simple. Us that are followers of Jesus, we that are followers of Jesus, have to make the decision that you're not taking my life, but I'm going to lay it down so that I might show you who Jesus is. I think a lot of us are waiting for revival to come when everything that needed to happen for revival to take place has already happened. Everything that needed to take place for us to experience newness of life has already taken place. Jesus has already done the work. I say it a lot when I'm preaching, but if he never did another thing for us, he's already done enough. Everything you need to experience the new creation life that God has for you has already been done. And it's really simple to step into, but it's not easy. Lay down your life. Choose to lay down your life so that nobody can take it from you, but you choose to sacrifice it. You choose to sacrifice it to show the love of Jesus. Watch how your life is brought into revival. And when you are brought into revival, that eventually is going to begin to expand and extend to your family and to your community. If every follower of Jesus walked this out the way Jesus walked it out, we would experience such an amazing revival, reformation, newness of life, whatever you want to call it. We would experience the greatest outpouring of God's Spirit and God's anointing on all flesh like we've never experienced it before, and we're not waiting on God to experience it. He's waiting on us. He's waiting on us to make the decision to stop acting like everybody's taking from us and say, you know what, you can't take it because I'm going to lay it down instead. And I know this will mess with your political point of view, and this will mess with your household point of view, and this will mess with how you walk out your job and how you walk out your life. And it's not a comfortable message, and it's not one that I enjoy hearing either, but it's one that's true. It's one that's not easy, but it's one that's pretty simple. Lay down your life so that God can infill you with his life. Die to selfish ambition, die to selfish gain, so that you can begin to show newness of life, not just for yourself, but for your family, for your community, and for the whole world. It's not an easy thing, but it's what God has called us to do. And there's grace for us to walk it out, and none of us are going to be perfect in it, and none of us are going to have all the right answers all of the time. But the answer's simple for restoring relationships. The answer is simple for getting to a place of revival in our relationship with God. The answer is simple with seeing an outpouring of the Spirit of God like never before. Die to self. Choose to lay down your life so that people might see the love of Jesus in you. And I hope that as you are challenged by this message, you don't just let it fall on deaf ears and you don't just ignore it, but you start taking steps to show this to the people around you. And you know what? Just start at home. Start with the people you're closest to. Lay down your life so that they might see the love of Jesus in you. And then let that extend to your workplace, and let that extend to your church body, and let that extend to your whole community so that they might see the good works that God is doing in you, not because you're so great, but because he's so great. Not because you are so full of faith, but because God is faithful to those even when we are faithless. He remains faithful. I love you all so much. I hope this message encouraged you. I want you to know that if you are walking through a painful season and you are a caregiver, that God's grace is with you and is sufficient for you. And that when you get on the other side of this journey, you're going to be grateful for some of the beautiful memories that you have and for some of the lessons that you learned. And you're going to have a decision to make, though, is that am I going to use this to be bitter and angry over the life that I've been dealt? Or am I going to show the love of Jesus through it? Am I going to act like life was stolen from me, or am I going to lay down my life? And I want to encourage you to take care of yourself. I want to encourage you to take time for yourself, even though you may feel guilty about it. You need it so that you can be who you've been called to be for whoever you're caring for. And it's not just for sick people. If you're a parent, you've got to take care of yourself so that you can be there for your child more effectively. Because if you're drained and completely depleted of life, how are you supposed to give life to others? So self-care is so important. Taking time for yourself, building yourself up in faith is so important, but don't just do it for you. Do it so you can lay down your life and show the love of Jesus to others. So God is there with you. God is there, and he's going to sustain you. and he's going to bring life, and he is going to bring healing to bodies, to hearts, to minds, to souls. God is faithful, and he is true to his promises. I can tell you, after walking through that time in life with Mom, that not one of God's promises has gone without being answered. Not one of God's promises has gone without him fulfilling it. He's brought to fulfillment everything he promised he would bring to fulfillment, even when I don't understand it, and even when I don't like the way he did it. You know what? Mom experienced healing, and it didn't happen here where I wanted it to happen, but it happened where she is right now. And I've experienced fullness of life, and I would love for her to be here with me to experience that fullness of life, but I've experienced it anyway in Christ Jesus, even in her absence. And so whatever it is you're going through, it might not go the way you wanted, but God's promise is still true, and God is faithful. His love is infinite. His love is more than we can possibly imagine. So be encouraged that God is with you. He's not left you or forsaken you, but he's going to be with you all the way through the journey and beyond. I love you all so much, and I thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to being with you next week. Talk to you later.